So I read an article today from UCL about just like real estate and it suffering from people working from home. And it said we estimate that commercial office buildings at the end of 2029 are going to be worth about 40% less from their value in 2019. And the whole article was just talking about how work from home is factoring in like with this decrease in value. And that's something we've all known in the conversation about working from home, about how a lot of people saying to their employees, like, get back in the office is because they've paid so much for this office space and they might actually have a lease that just goes way too long. So they're like, we can't just have an empty building. We're losing all this money and not using it. So that's obviously like part of the conversation. And obviously, loads of people who influence our governments around the world are huge corporate landlords. And what we should, in theory, do is take that office space and turn it into public housing. Not going to happen anytime soon. But I wanted to start with that because today's video isn't about that, because I wanted to focus on the psychology and ideology of these corporate CEOs who are forcing people back into the office just for no reason, basically. Because a lot of it is to do with this need for total control over their employees' lives. And why I want to focus on that is that this cult of neoliberalism isn't just satisfied with forcing you into a system where you have to become a corporate slave for many people and pay extortionate amounts of money to commute to work and to live near work and all that other stuff that comes with living in modern capitalism. They also need to see you at your desk being miserable as well. Otherwise, to them, and a lot of them actually believe this, you're actually not working. And working from home, doing the exact same thing from home, isn't actually working either. I've actually experienced this myself, and I want to talk about that today as well. And of course, when we're talking about work from home, maybe some leftists don't want to focus on it, because I saw during the pandemic, a lot of people were saying, like, the real working class, people who have real jobs, it doesn't really matter about working from home. They can't do their jobs from home. And that is like a fair point to some extent, but also kind of fails to realize that a lot of people these days having to work in these jobs, they're not making a lot of money. And even if they do come from like a more middle class background, once they go out into the working world on their own, if you're making like £21,000 in London, living in a flat share, and you're working in a corporate office job, that doesn't make you like middle class or upper class. Just because you might have come from that background, you are going right down the bottom of a lot of people. And I knew people at my job, and this happens a lot in London, they'd moved from their poorer northern town after university and they'd gone to London to look for work. And they'd been working for like 12 years at this point, and they had no savings because they've been working whatever jobs they could get where work was more common in a place like London, but they were having to pay the extortionate cost of living. So they couldn't actually build up any wealth, and they weren't like climbing some sort of class ladder or having a nice cozy middle class lifestyle where they have a corporate job, corporate car, private health insurance. Many people who work these corporate office jobs aren't well off. And when I worked mine, I was being paid £21,000 a year and I had a master's degree, right? And when I left that job, the company advertised my role and they were saying the salary was actually going to be £17,000 for the exact same job. And a lot of capitalists will tell you, well, you know, if you don't want a job with bad pay, then retrain, learn how to code, do something more meaningful, more lucrative. But across like every single sector in the bullshit economy and these bullshit jobs, it's insanely competitive right now, including lots of jobs to do with computer science graduates, as they're finding out they can't get jobs, which used to be seen as like this sort of holy grail of money making, getting a computer science degree from a good university. That has become so competitive as well. People are doing their jobs for way less money. But of course, when you're working in one of these bullshit jobs, one of the perks is, for a lot of people, you can work from home. And we're seeing this more and more since obviously the start of the coronavirus pandemic, where people like myself, we had to work from home and help stop this virus from spreading. But a lot of our employers didn't like that because they couldn't see us all the time. And if they couldn't see us, then we could be up to no good, because fundamentally, these people don't trust you, which seems bizarre considering they hired you in the first place to do a job they think you're a child where you must be watched at all times, otherwise you won't do that job. Which I always thought was so bizarre, because if you didn't do the job, they would be able to see you hadn't done the job. What do bosses typically do to people who don't fulfill their duties? They fire them. So why would that make a difference? If you can see me or you can't see me, if I'm doing the work, there's going to be evidence I'm doing the work. If I'm not doing it, there's going to be evidence I'm not doing it, and then you can take appropriate action. But again, it's part of this cult of neoliberalism where these people just want dominion over your actual existence. So it actually goes beyond the money making, the exploitation of labor. It's literally like these people want to feel like they have power over you. And I always think this when I talk about managers, because obviously a lot of like middle managers, they're kind of in the same boat as the rest of us. They're getting paid badly, they're being exploited for their labor, but they seem to get off on having power over people. So I think when the communist revolution comes, we're going to have a debate over what to do with these types of people who are essentially, in my mind, class traitors. I'm talking about bad managers here, not just like managers in general. How they make the lives of all of us worse for the people extracting our labor value, but they're not actually benefiting from that themselves, really. Like, very, very marginally getting a bit of extra pay. Is that all it takes for some people? There has to be something deeper, and that's why I kind of want to talk about the psychology of these things today. So let's get into that a bit more. A lot of corporate CEOs, they just want to see you back in the office. So there's two people I want to talk about. The first one is this. Leaked audio reveals JP Morgan CEO going off on young staffers wanting to work from home. So Jamie Dimon torched young staffers for wanting to work from home, and this is what the audio said. A lot of you were on Zoom and you were doing the following. You know, looking at your mail, sending texts to each other about what an asshole the other person is, not paying attention, not reading your stuff. And if you don't think that slows down efficiency, creativity, creates rudeness, it does, okay? And when I found out that people are doing that, you don't do that at the goddamn meetings. You don't go to a meeting with me. You got my attention. You got my focus. I don't bring my phone. I'm not sending texts to people. It doesn't work, and it doesn't work for creativity. I do love the words creativity and JP Morgan. Don't think they really go together. And don't give me the shit that work from home Fridays works. I call a lot of people on Friday, and there's no goddamn person to get a hold of. The young generation is being damaged by this. That may or may not be in your particular staff, but they are being left behind. They're being left behind socially, ideas, meeting people. In fact, my guess is most of you live in communities a hell of a lot diverse in this room. Everyone should be looking to be 10% more efficient. If I was running a department for 100 people, I guarantee you, if I wanted to, I could run it with 90 and be more efficient. I guarantee you, I could do it in my sleep. And the notion of these bureaucracies, I need more people, I can't get it done. No, because you're filing out requests that don't need to be done. Your people going to meetings they don't need to go to. I can't stand it. Now you have a choice. You don't have to work at JP Morgan. So the people of you who don't want to work at the company, that's fine with me. I'm not mad at you. Don't be mad at me. It's a free country. You can walk on your feet. But this company is going to set our own standards. I come in, you know, I've been working 7 days a week since COVID. And I come in and I'm like, where is everybody else? But they're here and there, and the Zooms don't show up, and people say they didn't get stuff. So that's not how you run a great company. So the CEO of JP Morgan crying about working 7 days a week. How much do you get paid? So I have no sympathy. If you have to work 7 days a week for that extortionate amount of money you make every year, I don't care, because you're getting very, very handsomely rewarded for that. But again, you can tell a lot of this guy's problem is he feels like he doesn't have control over people. And look, I can understand maybe in certain environments, not being in the same room as each other might make things take a bit longer. Because yes, if everyone's at different parts of the country, might even be working on different time zones. If it's America, maybe you don't have that streamlined process of communication. At the same time, like for most corporate jobs, and anyone who has worked a corporate job can tell you this, you are not working all the time, and your work can be done in a way shorter amount of time than like your work hours, basically. And there's so much just general collective office procrastination that gets done. And I'm sure even at a place where people get paid a lot of money at like JP Morgan, I'm sure this happens there as well. So when he's talking about, like, you know, people not working on a Friday, I really doubt that's the young people at the bottom rung not working on Friday. It's probably all your exec mates who are not working on Fridays, because if there's anyone not getting a break at a company like JP Morgan, it's the Gen Z 23-year-old grads, right? It's not all his peers that he came up with when he was climbing the corporate ladder. So in my opinion, this like boomer generation, they just hate it when they can't see people. They hate it when they can't see people working because they think everyone is slacking. Everyone is watching Netflix. Everyone is like walking their dog. A new one I saw recently is apparently everyone's playing golf now, which again, like I said, when you're working in like a corporate shitty job in London, you're not all making like 150k with like 50 days off a year or whatever. It's not like a cushy corporate job. You're probably working for shit money and you can't afford to lose the job. So you're not taking massive 3-hour golf breaks after lunch or something like that. And just to bring it back to a UK context. So Lord Rose, so just your everyday common man, slams work from home as not proper work and warns it sets the UK back 20 years. The 75-year-old who was chief exec of Marks and Spencer, which is like a supermarket chain, and recently stepped down as the chairman of Asda, which is like our version of Walmart, where he ordered HQ staff back to the office at least 3 days a week, said the country has gone backwards, I think by 20 years in the last 4. When asked if the UK could afford to work from home, Lord Rose said, I don't believe it can. This country is in a parlous place. We have regressed in this country in terms of working practices, productivity, which I want to talk about a bit more, and in terms of the country's well-being, I think by 20 years in the last 4. We are creating a whole generation, and probably a generation beyond that, of people who are used to actually not doing what I call proper work. I believe that productivity is less good if you work from home. I believe that your personal development suffers, that you're not going to develop as well as you might if you've been in the workplace as long as I have. I think lastly, there is a connection, a correlation, yet to be proven, between the current state of mental health of particularly young people and the number of people who are working away from a workplace. I think it's bad. So a lot of these corporate CEOs just like bang on about how work from home makes people less productive. But like, what does that even mean in this context? Because like I said, with a lot of these boomer corporate CEOs, they think you're working more if you're at your desk just because they can see you. Like, that is literally it. But so many people who have done both, worked from home and worked in office, they'll tell you a lot of the time when they're working at the office, they're just slacking off because you can also get away with more because they just see you, right? They see you. So you have no scrutiny about like whether you're actually at work or not. You're just there. So you can slack off as long as your work gets done, which most people are fine at managing their own workload, then no one's going to be on your case. But suddenly when you disappear from that office chair, loads of them start thinking you're not actually doing anything. And that's why I find it so bizarre, because if the work isn't done, the work isn't done. Like, you can judge it based on their work. But again, these people, it's all about control for them. And they act like, oh, when I was younger, we did it this way, so that's the only way to do it. Well, like, fucking tough. The world has changed now. And people have realized, a lot of people, sitting at an office 40 hours a week in a terrible, a terrible chair with terrible equipment, with loads of people you don't really like, with like horrible office lighting, maybe might not be the best thing for productivity or for happiness. The only point I'll sometimes take is, sometimes if you're working in a certain industry, I don't know what one that would be, but sometimes having the interpersonal skills might be better if you work more in an office because you have, the experience of talking to different people, talking to clients. As sick as that, the thought of doing these jobs makes me feel. I can understand that to an extent, but most corporate drones don't really need to be developing their interpersonal skills because most corporate drones sit at a desk all day and pretty much don't really leave the desk apart from for bullshit meetings, which most of them don't really need to be done in the first place. Again, if you've worked in a corporate job, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So for me, it's just this like psychopathic need for control and basically this boomer mentality that if you aren't seen to be working, you must not be working and we can't trust you. Like, all you workers, the only thing you want to do is not work. None of you want to do an honest day's work. You're all shirkers. You all just want to go, millennials, to your Starbucks and get your avocado toast and your soy lattes, and you just want to do the absolute bare minimum. Actually, when you actually fulfill your work quota, we're going to call it quiet quitting if you don't go above and beyond and actually allow us to exploit your labor for free if you do extra work, because that's how entitled we are to your time. And I want to talk about my own personal experience. We've been talking about people like I don't know and in jobs I don't know. So basically, I used to work at a pharmaceutical business-to-business magazine and website. This is in 2019. I got this job. So I got it in November 2019, and Obviously, the pandemic started the next month and came to the UK in 2020. And by March 2020, I remember I actually had jury service, which my employer wasn't happy about. But in March 2020, it was clear we couldn't stay in the office, really, because all the government was saying, you got to work from home. My boss was an absolute control freak and really didn't want to do this. Like, apparently, I wasn't there because I was doing jury service, which was cancelled because of COVID. They had to basically force her to make it mandatory because she was freaking out about it. Now, I knew from doing my job, I could easily do it from home, like really easily, because what would happen in my job is I'd write like 3 to 5 stories in the morning, and then me and my like editor slash manager, we'd work on the print magazine in the afternoon, and we had deadlines, right? And every day I had like a lunchtime deadline to finish my online stories, and in the afternoon, although I didn't have like a deadline, there was a monthly deadline. So I knew if I didn't do this work, at some point, I was going to have to do it. And, I was managing my own workload at that point. And most people in the company were in a very similar position. I didn't really interact with the CEO, even though she was in the office, much, only if she wanted like a random chat about some random bullshit. My colleagues, I didn't really talk to beyond my one manager slash editor about work. Like sometimes you'd bullshit with other people, but you really wouldn't. And anything we spoke about, we could definitely email or just quickly phone call about if we needed to. So there was like no need for me to be in the office, but my boomer boss was really old school and was just a crap boss really, and a bit of a control freak. So we actually did have to work from home. And like multiple times she would have like a company-wide meeting where she would just freak out about basically like the lack of control. Go around asking like what are you doing? What are you doing? Like accusing us of basically slacking. We'd explain to her what we're doing, but like I said with the start of the video, we had deadlines every single day. I'm like, if you want to see what I'm doing at lunchtime every day, come and look at what I've written. And what would actually happen is her husband, who was retired, she would get him to go through everything I've written to look for mistakes, like really micromanage me just to have a go at me about it, because she was thinking like, I must not be working properly because I'm working from home. So this is before the days of AI and stuff, by the way, so I couldn't be doing something like that. So she was just like losing her mind. And then in August 2020, she made us go back to the office. And this is before like anyone did. And when I used to get the train to London, I'm seeing if I can find a video. My train, which was rammed every day when I commuted, was completely empty. This is how early she wanted us to come in. And there was no safety precautions. People didn't have to wear masks. We were sitting in the same seats. And for me personally, it's before the vaccines as well. It's really stressful. I was living with my parents at the time as well, who are not elderly, but they're, a fair bit older than me, in their 60s now. So I was worried about giving them COVID. Like, we didn't know much about it. And then eventually, it just stressed me out too much. And I just said, fuck it. Had a huge argument with her. I made a whole video about this when it actually happened. You can go check that out. Had a huge argument with her about like working from home when the government said we should do it again. This is at the end of 2020. And she was refusing, like bizarrely, because obviously she didn't care about the health of her employees. And I just explained like everything to her. She said I should be grateful I have a job. Don't worry. I went off on her when she said that to me. And then, I quit my job. And luckily, 2 months later, I started doing YouTube full time. Not because I was making enough money, but I just thought, I'll have 3 months while I do it full time. And the channel took off like straight away. And here I am today, 4 years later. And it's all gone well, thankfully. But that was like a very radicalizing experience. And it was all because my boss had been so conditioned in this cult of neoliberalism, combined with her own like power trip, she just could not trust her employees to work from home, even though we proved to her when we have to, we could do it fine. Like there was no drop in revenue, there was no drop in output or productivity, as they like to say. There was none of that because we were all still good at our jobs and we were all doing our jobs to get paid. So she could check every day if we were doing it, which we were, and we deliver the product every month, which we did, and she still wouldn't trust us. And that's what made like a few people, including myself, quit at the end of the day, because they had no trust in the workers while she paid me like shit as well. So for me, while that was helpful, developing like my own political ideology. I was a communist when this all happened anyway. It's just to see firsthand what neoliberal capitalism does to someone's mind and just how much they view their workers with absolute disdain. Like, we are all children. Like, she was in her 60s, I was 25, so I was a lot younger, but she viewed us as children who needed to be disciplined, who needed to be seen working, or we weren't working, and she viewed us as like a hostile force, like basically just take the piss out of her, get paid for doing nothing. And the thing is, when you work from home, right, you do like slack more. Like, you do make like lunch and stuff and take maybe a bit longer, or maybe you throw some YouTube on in the background to watch while you work because there's no one else around. Like, who does that affect? Helps me work, keeps me entertained while I worked, but to them that would be horrifying. But at the same time, despite that, we still waste less time, and that's because there's like loads of distractions. And I'm going to speak about this in a bit, because I'm going to talk about the people who talk about the positives of working in an office. But there's no distractions, there's no annoying colleagues, there's no like loads of meetings that can just go on because people start talking about like social things rather than actual work things. And you can just totally concentrate on your work and create this environment that is more productive to your work. And also, you cannot overstate the benefits of when you're commuting somewhere, like into London like I am. I used to get up at 6. If I wanted to risk it, maybe 6:30. But if I wanted to guarantee I was going to get to work on time, I'd have to get up at 6, leave the house at 6:30, get the 6:50 train. But then I would get to work like 20, 30 minutes early. But if I took a risk and woke up at 6:30 and got the 7:10 train, I think, if that was a little bit late, I would have been late for work. So only when I started getting more comfortable, I would get up that early. But again, you're getting up that early every single day, and you're going to revenge procrastinate like I did. I was trying to fit in playing football, doing my YouTube channel, exercising, all that stuff. So I would like sleep like 4 and a bit hours a night sometimes, because I wanted to make sure work didn't become my identity. But also, you'd pay a lot of money for the train. Like, my daily expense was like 13 or 14 pounds for the train, maybe a tiny bit less, I don't remember at this point. So every single day I'm barely sleeping, waking up really early, doing this horrible commute which is busy, stressful, hot, uncomfortable, doing that every single day and absolutely fucking hating my life. But when I was able to work from home, like I said, I would wake up just before we started working. So I'd wake up at like 8:20 or something. We started work at 8:30, finished at 5:30. And that just makes such a difference to your life. I was happier, just generally my mood was a lot better, and I was just more relaxed. And lots of the stress that went with modern corporate work under capitalism really faded into the background or was mitigated to some extent. And I feel like if you are making people slave away in these bullshit jobs, which are like mind numbing and just generally like very soul destroying, the least you could do is try and make it a little bit better for workers. But again, they don't want just your labor. They want your soul. They actually want your soul, and they don't give a shit about how it makes you feel. So that's why they want you in 5 days a week. And when they get to the top of the corporate ladder as well, they have a chip on their shoulder. They're like, well, I did my time, so you should as well. It reminds me of those people in America who didn't want student loan debt cancelled because they paid off their own ones. It's like that sort of mindset. Now, of course, there are people who argue against working from home generally. And I got some of these arguments here, and I just want to respond to them. So there was an article about this in January, and I just want to talk about this one argument, and I hear this a lot. So for others such as Kirsten, a 59-year-old age UK worker from Cornwall, the change cannot come soon enough, like people being forced back into the office. She's looking forward to more face-to-face time with colleagues after feeling disconnected working at home. I've suffered from depression and crave company. I ended up getting a radio just to hear other voices. So there's a lot of camaraderie, and in the office we're able to support each other after a particularly difficult or harrowing call. Doing this via Microsoft Teams is not quite the same. You know, she says here, Kirsten understands that not everyone feels the same, and it's become harder financially for some people to work in the office regularly. In my opinion, people should have the choice to work from home if it suits them better. So I'm not calling out this woman specifically because she seems to have a pretty level-headed view on these things. But like, I want to address her little argument, especially as someone who's a bit older, like 59 years old. Hot take. I don't think you should get most of your relationships from the workplace because they're never, in my experience, really authentic relationships. And even the better ones are never really a replacement for outside work relationships. And what I feel with a lot of older people, especially maybe if they live alone or whatever, they really use work as a crutch for social interaction. And of course, if someone says they're lonely and work is the only interaction they get with the outside world, I do feel really bad for them. And I don't think the solution should be, when people bring this up, and it's not saying she's saying this, but I've heard other people use it as an excuse. I don't think the solution should be everyone has to work 5 days a week because some people rely on it for social interaction. The solution should be there should be more like general places to go for people to have social interaction, be it elderly or young, and people should be allowed more flexible hours or not being forced back into the office. And the sad thing is, what happens a lot of the time is part of the benefit of working from home is you don't have to deal with people who rely on the office as a crutch. So I remember we had this older guy in our office, and if he caught you, that was it. He would just chew your ear off, and he wasn't interested in you. So it wasn't like a mutual relationship. He just wanted to talk to someone. So he would corner you and dump all of his life shit on you. And as a nice British person, like we often do, we will entertain it to our detriment. So when we don't have to see this person, we're happy. And what I would say is him dumping on me like that isn't even a replacement for social interaction. It might make him feel a bit better, but at the same time, for me, I don't like him. I don't like this person. I don't want the relationship with this person because it's so one-sided. So I think just, generally as a socialist, we look at things about like the whole of society. So if we still have to work, even as a transitional period between corporate work or whatever, you just want to have both things. You want more opportunities for this woman to go outside and meet other people who might be feeling a similar way. And you don't want people to feel like they have to come to work to help older people have some sort of relationships. And also, I became pretty good friends with one of my colleagues, but it's also trauma bonding. And once you're done with the workplace, you don't really have as much motivation to stay in contact, no matter how much you rely on each other in the workplace. And sometimes when you want a clean break from work, you kind of don't want to talk to anyone from that place again. So I always think relationships and friendships are better outside the workplace. I was lucky in my life that I didn't ever rely on these things for friendships or anything like that. And I do understand, why people might, and I understand people can make friends. Of course I do. At the same time, I don't think it's part of the argument to make people work in an office full time if they don't want to. And like she says, if people do want to, then fair enough. And that should be some sort of option if we're going to make a compromise. But what's happening at the moment is the corporate CEOs are deciding that no, there is no compromise. You're all just back in under my little dictatorship, and I have to see you at your desk. Otherwise, you're not actually working a proper job. And a big one, of course, working from home. We talked about parents and stuff. Obviously, a lot of newer parents have based their new childcare routines around being actually able to work from home and look after their child at the same time, which seems fair enough. Don't have to pay for childcare. Both of you could work and both of you could look after a child when you work from home. Sounds like a pretty good deal. But also a big one is disabilities and neurodivergence. So obviously the world generally isn't designed for people with physical disabilities and also often mental disabilities or just neurodivergence as a whole. I myself have OCD, which didn't make it too hard to work, but I think because you want control so bad, it did make me actually quit my job and lash out at my boss and stuff, justifiably so, but that's part of the reason. But just another interview from the BBC. So Rebecca Mitchell, 38, a software engineer from London, says a difference in her productivity at work has been drastic since she started working from home 10 years ago. She has ADHD and says before working remotely, she struggled to stay employed. Working from an office adds too much stress and leads to a wealth of mental health issues for me. She says that whereas before she felt overlooked for career progression because of her disability, since working from home, her salary has tripled. Autism and ADHD are now only being accepted. People understand neurodivergence now like they didn't before. People like me rely on working from home in order to be a productive part of the workforce. So I think that's, of course, really important to keep in mind for many people. And generally, we're just talking about jobs that can be done from home. No one is pushing the work from home revolution where we're saying that every single job ever should be made work from home. We're not saying that, and that is impossible. But when you're a corporate slave, everyone who is a corporate slave knows that 90% of their job, firstly, is bullshit, but second of all, can be done from home. And so much of office politics, office control, all this bullshit around being in an office you don't want to go to for a multitude of reasons, and then working a job you hate, and especially if you have something wrong with you like OCD, ADHD, if you have some sort of disability, physical or mental, these conditions are hard. And also, you know, sitting in a really bad chair. Something I thought about recently, I injured my back playing football, and it's actually been hard to not only sit down, it's been hard to lie down on a bed. And I was thinking, if I was still working in that office, I just couldn't do it. Like, I think I might have to quit because I can't sit at a desk like that all day. There's nothing I can do with this physical ailment when I'm sitting down to make it feel better. Like, I've bought the cushions, I've bought new chairs, I've bought new bedding and stuff. The only thing that helps is time. And are they going to give me time off for a back injury I got from football? No. Because my job, obviously, you know, I can do whatever I want. That allows me to manage it okay and still work. And there are so many different things that people overlook because we are fundamentally like an ableist society where people don't even think about these things when it comes to work. And it doesn't actually affect your productivity. What a lot of these things affect is your ability to navigate social interactions, which a lot of the time aren't actually necessary to you physically doing your job. They're necessary to office politics and office bullshit, which a lot of these corporate CEOs like made their careers on, basically. So I guess the solution for a lot of people is the hybrid model should be the way forward, but there should be a wider acceptance that, yeah, people don't want to work in offices for various different reasons, and some people can't. And also, when the cost of everything is getting so insane, are you seriously saying you got to make people commute to work, go to all these overpriced commuter chains like Pret and all that shit? They have to do this because why? You don't trust them. If you don't trust someone to do a job from home that they can easily do from home, then maybe don't employ them in the first place. But again, it's this mentality a lot of these boomer corporate CEOs grow up with, that we are their underlings just to be led, to be scolded like children, and they cannot trust you for a second. If they give you some sort of leniency in anything, then you're going to take the absolute piss. And they think being a little dictator is the best way to get like productivity from you, rather than allowing you to design your own workplace or even work schedule that makes you most effective at your job. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. A bit of a ramblier one today. Hope you've been enjoying the uploads. I'm feeling a fair bit better now. And yeah, I'm probably going to do another 4 videos next week. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching.